Hello, welcome to the video where I'm going to show you some interesting ideas and techniques to help you make better dark levels in Mario Maker 2. So first of all, why would you even want to make a dark level? Most players don't like dark levels because without the ability to see what's coming, it's very difficult to actually react to the obstacles, and so the ideal strategy is to go extremely slowly to make sure that you don't die to something you couldn't have reacted to. This is not a very fun way to play, and that's the reason why most people don't like dark levels. So what I'm going to show you first here is some techniques for lighting up dark levels and some interesting ideas you might use them for. So this first one here is fireballs on tracks. If they're on tracks covered by ground, they can't hurt the player, which is very nice because unlike most enemies, these guys can light up a fairly wide area around them, which make them great sources of light. So for this first idea here, you can see there's a pink coin in the bottom right, but you can only actually see it whenever the fireball is all the way on the right side, which means that if you want to find the secret, you have to be a bit more observant. And then you just go over the top here and go grab it. The other fireballs on tracks there make it so that you can actually see the grinders, which do not emit any light. This is important because the way they're set up here, it can be very difficult to know when it's actually safe to go across, but since we have proper lighting, the player is able to go across. The fireballs can also double as actual lethal obstacles if you so desire. Anyways, on to the next idea. So similar to fireballs, Pswitches and POW blocks emit a small radius of light around them, which are also very useful for lighting areas. You can put them on tracks as well. The major downside of using Pswitches and POW blocks is that they can potentially be used for cheese if the player is somehow able to grab them, meaning you need to completely surround them with ground blocks, which unfortunately decreases how effective they can be at lighting the area, because if you cover them in ground blocks, as you can see by the top row, they only emit a tiny amount of light that isn't already just lighting ground blocks, which don't necessarily need to be lit up completely. Additionally, if you hit the on-off block, their radius decreases further, which makes them almost completely useless aside from indicating that there is indeed ground here. Anyways, there is an idea for darkness that's pretty interesting here though, and that's you can see that 3 of the pits lead to death while 1 of them leads to a door. The player can look and examine which one is the correct one, and then they hit the on-off block, it turns the lights off, and now they have to remember which path is the correct one to go in. So it could be interesting to build a level like this, and there's a similar idea later on in this level. The next interesting quirk with dark levels is that Pokies and Wigglers emit a spotlight from their head in the direction they're facing, which can be used to create something like this, where you want to go when the Wiggler is looking at you so that you know when it's safe to pass by the grinder. And because Pokies can't be stacked, the best way to hold them in place is either with a swinging claw or a conveyor belt. Depending on the setup of your level, one might be better than the other. Also keep in mind that enemies will load facing towards the player, so if the Pokie was not on the conveyor belt and just out in the open, if I were to have instead exited through this door, the Pokie would start off facing towards the right instead of towards the left like he is right now. Interestingly, enemies will still emit light even after they've been defeated. So as you can see here, there's Wigglers that shoot out of bullet bill blasters. They can't hurt the player, but they still emit their spotlight around them. So as you can see here, we're using this so that the player knows when it's safe to go past these grinders here. Perhaps the most useful technique for lighting dark levels is using Aero Signs. Aero Signs will emit a small amount of light, and dim light in that matter, in the direction they're pointing, as you can see above. They'll even do this if they're covered up by ground, which, as you can see on the right side, it appears that there are bubbles of light without actually having a light source. And I'm running low on time, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So this can be used to basically get free light wherever you want without any possibility of cheese, because the players can't interact with the arrows at all. The only downside with Aero Signs is that they can't overlap things like mushroom stems or semi-solid platforms, which can make it a bit more difficult to decorate an underwater dark level, or any dark level for that matter. But other than that, this is probably the best technique. Although strangely, in SMB1, this technique doesn't work. Aero Signs don't emit light in SMB1, which is why I would suggest just not making dark levels in that theme. Anyway, the next technique is to use sound effects to light up an area, and I have an accompanying idea. So as you can see here, we have everyone's favorite thing, pick a path. I'll try number 1, and oh, it's wrong. Well, there are numbers above here, and if you hit these blocks, it shoots a firework, which can show you which numbers to go in. So as you could see, it was 1, 2, 3, or it was 3, 1, 2, 3. Also interestingly, fireworks have a bit of RNG. So as you can see, a green one is a different size than a blue one, and a pink one is the biggest one. Let's see if we can get yeah. See, I can see the entire one with the pink one, whereas with the green and blue ones, I could only see part of the one. So that's a bit of strange RNG, but it's there nonetheless. Anyway, so it was 3, 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to show some other sound effects that can emit light as well. So flash makes a flash. It's pretty cool. If you put this on to Mario, then every time he gets a power-up, it'll flash. Glory will light up the entire screen. And if you put it onto Mario, every time he crouches, you can do this. This can be an interesting concept for a dark level to build around, where you don't have any sources of light, but the player can illuminate the whole screen whenever they want. The zap sound effect has a bit of a cooldown on blocks, but it also lights up the whole screen. It doesn't do it for as long as Glory though, and it also covers up parts of the screen with these lightning bolts, so I would not suggest using that unless you're making a sort of horror level. Spark also, it's similar to Firework in that it lights the area above it and lasts for a little while. It can be convenient if you have something coming out of a pipe in a dark level. Put the spark sound effect on the pipe so that when something comes out of it, it gets illuminated and draws attention towards it. If the player has a star, the entire screen will be illuminated. This can have a similar thing to Glory, where you give the player a star so that they can see everything, and then when it runs out, they now have to use the information that they learned to proceed. Bombs emit a small amount of light when they explode. This probably isn't all that useful to know, but it's an interesting thing nonetheless. As you can see, the radius of light around Toad will increase whenever he picks up an item. So that's also useful. It might be good to give the player an item as a sort of lantern. It's also nice because Yoshi will increase the radius. Although Yoshi holding a Pswitch will not increase the radius at all. And if you're wondering what happens when you get into a boot instead, it does not increase the radius of light at all. So yeah, that about sums up the various things that you can do with the dark themes. I hope you learned something new, and hopefully with this information we can start making actually good and interesting dark levels instead of really crappy ones. Anyways, hope you have a nice day. Bye.